The protection of the Pope has a rich history to it. Protecting a pope who wants to be accessible to the public is never an easy task.
When Donald Trump met Pope Francis in 2017, he was stunned by what he saw. Beneath the bright Renaissance uniforms of the Swiss Guard stood a deadly force. Elite soldiers trained in sniping, counterterrorism, and bound by oath to die for the Pope.
They took their oath to protect the Pope and serve the Church.
I'm here and I make my job for the Pope.
For over 5 centuries, they've defended the Pope with silent, lethal precision. These guards are soldiers hiding in plain sight, and their true capabilities will shock you. Number 9. The Ancient Oath of Loyalty. Every year on the 6th of May, something extraordinary happens inside the Vatican. In a quiet courtyard of the Apostolic Palace, a group of young men in full Renaissance armor steps forward, one by one, to swear an oath that hasn't changed in over 500 years. With their left hand pressed to the bright red and gold flag of the Swiss Guard and 3 fingers of their right hand raised to symbolize the Holy Trinity, each recruit speaks the same chilling words. I swear to serve the Supreme Pontiff and his legitimate successors faithfully, loyally, and honorably, dedicating all my strength, even my life, to their defense. This isn't some empty ritual. This is a lifelong commitment, and a deadly serious one. The date of this ceremony isn't random. It marks the anniversary of the bloodiest day in the Guard's history, the sack of Rome in 1527. When 20,000 soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire stormed the city, 147 Swiss Guards made a last stand at the steps of St. Peter's Basilica. Their sacrifice bought Pope Clement VII just enough time to escape through a hidden passage to Castel Sant'Angelo. Only 42 guards survived, and that moment cemented the oath in blood. Today, their names are still read aloud during the swearing-in ceremony. And for the men taking the oath, that moment changes everything. Luca Bachmann, a former halberdier, once said that the second his hand touched the flag, his life stopped being his. It belonged to a mission bigger than him. That same feeling was echoed recently by 20-year-old Maximilian Fischer, who joined the Guard in 2024. He said he felt honored and obligated to stand where those men died. But the oath isn't just about being willing to die. It's about how they choose to live. New recruits train intensely, attend spiritual retreats, and memorize the names of the fallen. Every drill ends with the phrase acriter et fideliter, meaning fiercely and faithfully. That vow has been tested even in recent years. In 1981, guards threw themselves over Pope John Paul II when a gunman opened fire in St. Peter's Square. In 2015, during a visit to Manila, they shielded Pope Francis from a potential bomb threat. In a world where loyalty is rare, this tiny force still pledges absolute obedience before God, and they mean it. Number 8. Beyond the colorful uniforms. They might look like they've stepped out of a Renaissance painting, but those bright blue, yellow, and red uniforms the Swiss Guards wear are far more than eye candy for tourists. Each one tells a story of tradition, survival, and strategy. Let's clear up one of the biggest myths right away. Michelangelo didn't design these uniforms. The current style was actually created in 1914 by Commandant Jules Ripond, who studied 16th century frescoes to recreate a uniform that felt timeless but was entirely modern for its day. So while they may look ancient, these designs are just a little over 100 years old. Crafting one of these suits is a serious commitment. It takes 154 individual pieces of wool, 3 rounds of fittings, and over 30 hours of hand stitching to complete a single set. Each uniform weighs around 8 pounds and costs several $1,000s to produce. Because of how intense the process is, only about 50 new uniforms are made each year, and every single one is custom fitted to its wearer. Even the colors carry deep meaning. The blue and yellow represent Pope Julius II, who founded the Guard in 1506, while the bold red was added later in honor of Pope Leo X and the brutal bloodshed during the sack of Rome. But there's more going on than just history. Those big puffy sleeves? They're not just for show. They're roomy enough to hide compact weapons. The high collar isn't just decorative either. It protects the neck's main arteries, and the loose flowing cut lets guards move fast when needed. These aren't costumes. They're ready-for-action uniforms in disguise. Some parts of the outfit are true relics. Helmets and breastplates dating back to the 1500s are still used during special ceremonies like the annual oath-taking. But not everything is stuck in the past. Since 2019, the iconic helmets have been 3D printed using modern polymer, making them lighter, cooler, and far easier to produce. What used to take days now takes just a few hours. So the next time you see one of these guards standing motionless in their colorful suits, know this. You're looking at more than 5 centuries of history, stitched into 8 pounds of tradition, reinforced with 21st century tech. Number 7. Elite combat training. They might look like statues with feathers and halberds, but every Swiss guard is built like a weapon. Behind that quiet posture is a soldier trained harder than most elite forces on Earth. It starts with a must. You can't even apply unless you've already completed Switzerland's mandatory military service. That's the bare minimum. If you're accepted into the Guard, the real grind begins. A brutal 2-month program that tests everything from discipline to survival instincts. The first month takes place in Isonne, a mountain training center in southern Switzerland. Recruits train side by side with cantonal police officers, running through live fire drills, learning emergency response, mastering the rules of force, and even training in firefighting. Every step is designed to teach control under pressure. Then the training moves to Vatican soil. There, the guards learn how to respond instantly to threats inside the church's most sacred spaces. They memorize every exit, every hallway, every blind corner the Pope might walk through, and they drill every day until reaction becomes instinct. But the real test comes with the Swiss Special Forces Command. On the same grounds used to train commandos, instructors walk guards through real-world nightmare scenarios, clearing rooms, stopping hostage takers, disarming attackers in dense crowds. One drill teaches them to form a human shield around the Pope in under half a second. Another teaches how to spot suicide bombers in the crowd without anyone noticing. Because their battlefield isn't a remote war zone, it's St. Peter's Square, where every second counts and one mistake could be fatal. Weapons training is just as intense. Guards qualify on Sig Sauer P220 pistols, SG 550 rifles, and MP7 submachine guns. They carry stun guns and pepper spray, tools added after the 1981 attempt on Pope John Paul II, when a guard jumped onto the Pope mobile to shield the wounded Pope. Now guards also learn trauma care, how to stop bleeding and keep the Pope alive while help is on the way. The mindset is as hard as the muscle. Recruits are drilled with one brutal truth: your survival is secondary to his. It's why some don't make it. Psychological screenings filter out anyone who lacks focus or nerve. Those who pass speak at least 2 Swiss national languages and can scan an entire crowd while standing completely still. When trouble comes, they move fast, think faster, and always stand between the Pope and danger. Number 6. Life inside the Vatican barracks. Life inside the Vatican barracks looks nothing like the ornate halls just a few steps away. The Swiss guards live in 3 old buildings from the 19th century, close enough to hear the crowds in St. Peter's Square, yet worlds apart in comfort. The walls are worn, the plaster is chipped, and most rooms still hold 3 bunks and a shared locker. There's no air conditioning, no private bathrooms, and no personal space. Even the foundation managing their facilities admits the setup is cramped and outdated. That's why a $60 million renovation is finally on the way, scheduled to begin in 2026. Once complete, each guard will have his own room, and married quarters will be added for officers, and eventually for female recruits if the Vatican opens that door. Until then, the daily rhythm stays locked to a strict schedule. Wake up is at 5:30 sharp. Prayers come next, followed by a quick breakfast before guards report for duty by 7:30. They rotate posts throughout the day, guarding papal apartments, museum entrances, and key Vatican gates. At noon, they break for lunch, served by a small team of Albertine nuns. Then it's back to post until 6, dinner at 7:30, and lights out by 10:30. They get 1 day off per week, and vacation is just 20 days a year. Even leaving Vatican City requires permission, and smartphones stay off while on duty. Posting online is allowed only with approval, ever since a few social media slips exposed sensitive parts of Vatican security. Still, despite the tight rules and tight quarters, the barracks are known for building a bond that runs deep. Inside an old storeroom turned bar called the Bar delle Guardie, guards relax after hours, switching between Italian, French, and German like it's nothing. Some play football with FC Guardia, their team that plays annual matches against the Vatican police. Others head to the gym or upstairs for band practice. Even birthdays are special, often celebrated with Swiss fondue cooked over makeshift burners. But none of this is random. The entire lifestyle is built to separate them from distractions, to focus them on one thing: protecting the Pope. It's why their motto, Acriter et Fideliter, meaning fiercely and faithfully, isn't just printed on flags. It hangs above doorways, echoes through drills, and defines every moment inside those walls. Number 5. The strict selection criteria. Getting into the Swiss Guard is like trying to thread a needle blindfolded. Out of nearly 9 million Swiss citizens, only about 40 men are accepted each year. That's not an exaggeration. It's one of the rarest roles on the planet, not because everyone's applying, but because almost no one qualifies. The basic requirements already filter out most people. You must be a single Swiss man, a practicing Catholic between 19 and 30 years old, and at least 5 feet 8.5 inches tall. You need either a high school diploma or a professional certificate, and you must have completed Swiss military service. Not just passed, but done it with distinction. Even if you clear that first hurdle, the real test is only beginning. You'll need a signed letter from your parish priest confirming that you don't just show up to church, you live it. Once you're in, you're expected to attend regular spiritual retreats and theology classes. Then comes the background check, and it's brutal. Vatican security interviews your former teachers, your neighbors, and yes, even your ex-girlfriends. They're not looking for perfect grades. They're looking for spotless character. One bad story, one sketchy detail, and you're done. And let's not forget the physical screening. One guard said it's harder than the initial selection phase for Swiss Special Forces. Recruits must sprint 20 meters in under 3 seconds, drag someone their own weight upstairs, and hold a plank for 6 straight minutes without shaking. That's before they even touch a uniform. Why? Because when disaster strikes, these men may have to lift a wounded pope and carry him to safety, fast. It's not just about strength. Recruits are tested for language skills too. Most are fluent in at least 2 of Switzerland's national languages, and all learn Italian for daily life inside the Vatican. Today, about 135 guards serve inside Vatican City, following an expansion ordered by Pope Francis ahead of the Holy Year in 2025. Each one signs up for a minimum of 26 months. The pay is modest, but they get free housing and something more valuable than money: the knowledge that they've joined the world's most exclusive military unit. Number 4. International security operations. When the Pope travels abroad, the colorful uniforms stay behind, but the protection doesn't. What most people don't see is the invisible wall moving with him. A tight, elite team of plainclothes Swiss guards. Usually no more than a dozen, these specialists blend into crowds, airports, motorcades, and official meetings, never drawing attention, never looking like security. But they are highly trained operators. Before the Pope even boards a plane, an advanced team is already in place. They walk every corridor, test communication systems, scan rooftops, and plan emergency routes, not just for threats, but even for sudden health issues. During the Pope's historic visit to Iraq in March 2021, the Swiss Guard had already been on the ground for weeks. British intelligence flagged a possible suicide bombing along the Mosul route. In response, the Guard coordinated with over 10,000 local troops and helped secure rooftops and blind spots. Iraqi police ended up intercepting a female bomber and a van packed with explosives. The public never even knew. The operation was so quiet, the story didn't surface until Pope Francis mentioned it in his upcoming memoir. Every part of this detail blends hard security with quiet diplomacy. Each guard usually picks up English and the local language before deployment. They study local customs and etiquette, memorize names and titles, and stay sharp enough to go from a formal handshake with a head of state to a rapid evacuation order if needed. During the Pope's visit to the Philippines in 2015, a Swiss Guard team walked Luneta Park in Manila at sunrise, identifying every sniper perch and drilling a 9-second shield formation that could fully cover the Pope with body armor hidden under their suits. When a bomb scare forced a full reroute of the motorcade the night before the public mass, they redrew the plan in hours. The next day, Pope Francis stood before 6 million worshippers without a single incident. Even peaceful events require razor-sharp focus. At Brazil's World Youth Day in 2013, a crowd of 500,000 overwhelmed the Pope mobile. Then came a misplaced backpack and a protest wave. Within seconds, the Guard had rerouted the convoy through a side street. That signature arc formation they use, shoulder to shoulder in 4 steps, has been refined ever since John Paul II was shot in 1981. Now, each guard wears a lightweight Kevlar vest under a tailored jacket, and some carry HK MP7 submachine guns hidden in messenger bags, able to respond to a rifle threat 60 meters away. But what truly separates the Swiss Guard is how they move. Never loud, never heavy-handed. Unlike the US Secret Service, which can lock down entire blocks, the Guard keeps security tight but flexible. They work with local teams instead of overruling them, ensuring the Pope stays accessible without being exposed. As one former commander put it, their job is to be everywhere and nowhere, invisible until the second it matters most. That balance is what's kept every papal trip safe to this day. Number 3, when the Swiss Guard went rogue. For more than 5 centuries, the Swiss Guard has been famous for ironclad loyalty, yet a few rare crises have shaken that record, and even made the Guards themselves rebel. The most shocking moment came on the night of May 4th, 1998. Colonel Alois Estermann had just been confirmed as the new commander of the Swiss Guard, but within hours, he and his wife, Gladys Meza Romero, were both found shot dead in their Vatican apartment. The official investigation concluded that a disgruntled 23-year-old Lance Corporal, Cedric Tournay, had killed them with his Sig Sauer pistol before taking his own life. Tournay had reportedly been upset over being denied the Benemerenti Medal after what he called 3 years, 6 months, and 3 days of injustices. The case remains the only recorded homicide inside Vatican walls. It shook the Guard to its core. Conspiracy theories exploded, claims of espionage, political cover-ups, and secret orders, but none were ever proven. The real consequence is that the Vatican was left without a commander just 48 hours before the annual swearing-in, forcing a retired officer to return and step in at the last minute. 16 years later, in 2014, a different storm hit, this time quietly from within. Colonel Daniel Anrig, a former Zurich police officer, had made changes that didn't sit well with the ranks. He enforced stricter discipline, carried out surprise inspections, and controversially moved his family into an upscale Vatican apartment. Guards began referring to the barracks as a boot camp. Pope Francis, known for rejecting excess and valuing humility, didn't like the tone either. Without warning, Anrig was removed from his post mid-tour, something that hadn't happened in modern memory. Vatican sources suggested the leadership style had become too harsh, though the Pope diplomatically said, "Every office has a shelf life." Then came the pandemic. In October 2021, the Vatican introduced a mandatory COVID-19 vaccine policy for all employees, including the Swiss Guard. 3 guards refused and resigned. 3 others were suspended until they agreed to comply. Though the Vatican insisted the departures were voluntary, Italian media described the moment as unprecedented, a tiny exodus in a corps known for quietly accepting far greater dangers without protest. For a brief time, the Guard's strength fell below its authorized level of 135 men. But after every crisis, the Guard has recovered, restructured, and recommitted itself to the mission of protecting the Pope fiercely and faithfully. Number 2, the sacking of Rome and Swiss Guard heroism. We have already brushed past the sack of Rome, but that brief mention barely scratched the surface. Let's go deeper into the day that didn't just shake the Vatican, it defined the Swiss Guard forever. It was the morning of May 6, 1527. Rome was barely waking when disaster struck. An imperial army, over 20,000 strong, swept over the Gianicolo and Vatican hills. 14,000 of them were Lutheran landsknechts, backed by 6,000 seasoned Spanish fighters and waves of unpaid Italian mercenaries. Their commander, Duke Charles of Bourbon, had promised them plunder, and with the city walls weakened and defenders scattered, the attack was brutally swift. On the papal side stood fewer than 200 Swiss Guards, 189 men to be exact, the last disciplined soldiers still ready to fight. Captain Caspar Royst knew what was coming. He rallied his men inside the Vatican's Teutonic cemetery and made the only decision that could save the Pope's life. 42 guards, under the leadership of Sergeant Hercules Goldley, escorted Pope Clement VII across the Passetto di Borgo, an 800-meter corridor connecting the Apostolic Palace to Castel Sant'Angelo. That ancient stone bridge was the Pope's only way out. The remaining 147 guards didn't follow. Instead, they turned towards St. Peter's Basilica and stood their ground on the marble steps, forming a human barricade. They were outnumbered nearly 50-1. What happened next is etched into Vatican memory. Captain Royst was killed in front of his wife, Elizabeth Klingler. Many of the guards were barely 19, but not one fled. Even artist and eyewitness Benvenuto Cellini later wrote in disbelief at how so few men bled so stubbornly. By the end of the day, every one of those 147 men had been cut down. The Pope survived, but Rome descended into chaos. For the next 8 months, the city was choked with murder, looting, and disease. The population dropped by more than 80%. But because those guards held their post, the church's head was spared. That sacrifice didn't just protect a pope, it rebuilt a legacy. The 42 surviving guards reorganized under Goldley and vowed never again to let the Swiss Guard fall into decline. Within 2 years, reinforcements arrived from the Swiss cantons. The Passetto itself was strengthened. To this day, guards still train by sprinting its length in full armor, timed against the very minutes that once determined a pope's survival. Every May 6th, that memory comes alive during the oath-taking ceremony. The 500th anniversary is already being prepared for May 6, 2027. The newly renovated barracks will be blessed that morning, and descendants of the fallen have been invited to witness the ceremony. Number 1. Why are the Swiss chosen over Italians? For more than 500 years, one question has lingered around the Vatican's walls. Why does the Pope still rely on Swiss nationals for his personal protection, instead of the Italians who literally surround him? The answer isn't about tradition or flashy uniforms, it's about strategy, trust, and a centuries-old agreement that still holds firm. Back in 1506, when Pope Julius II founded the Swiss Guard, Italy wasn't one unified country. It was a patchwork of city-states constantly at war, and local soldiers were notorious for switching sides when the pay ran dry. The Swiss, by contrast, had just proven themselves in the Burgundian Wars, beating larger, better-equipped armies with raw discipline and ruthless tactics, and they weren't caught up in Italian rivalries. Their homeland was landlocked, neutral, and politically disconnected. That neutrality made them perfect. The Pope's banker, Jacob Fugger, a German financier with deep ties to both Rome and the Swiss cantons, even helped bankroll the first deployment, precisely because Swiss soldiers could be trusted to answer only to the Pope. That principle of neutrality wasn't just understood, it was eventually written into European law. In 1648, the Peace of Westphalia formally recognized Switzerland's independence from the Holy Roman Empire, sealing its outsider status. When Italy finally unified in 1870 and annexed the Papal States, Pope Pius IX flat-out rejected protection from the very troops who'd taken his land. But the Swiss Guard? They stayed, loyal only to him. This unique setup was officially locked into law by the Lateran Treaty of 1929, the document that created Vatican City as an independent state. That treaty gave Italy responsibility for external defense but granted the Pope one special privilege, a single military unit drawn entirely from Switzerland for personal protection inside the Vatican. While Italian forces handle outer security, only the Swiss Guard is allowed to protect the pontiff himself. Swiss law even carves out a legal exception just for this role. Since 1927, Swiss citizens have been banned from serving in foreign militaries, but the Vatican Guard is an exception. It's seen as an honorary extension of Switzerland's own forces. Recruits train first with the Swiss army before taking a second oath to the Pope. That gives them a double layer of legal and ethical obligation, one to their homeland and one to the Holy See. Then there's the practical advantage. Swiss conscripts are raised multilingual. Most speak at least 4 languages, German, French, Italian, and English, before they even set foot in Rome. That's vital for dealing with foreign dignitaries and tens of thousands of international pilgrims. Italian police may guard the Vatican's border, but only the Swiss Guard brings that level of linguistic flexibility and diplomatic neutrality to the Pope's side. So this isn't just about symbolism. The Pope's security depends on men with no stake in Italian politics, trained to stand between him and danger, not just as soldiers, but as a bridge between nations. That trust, built over 5 centuries, is why the Vatican's smallest army is still made up entirely of Swiss Guards, and why that won't be changing anytime soon. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.